Hi, year 8. This is your first remote lesson for maths, and today we're looking at units of length. So we're going to look at what units we use to measure lengths and how to convert between them. So to start with, I want you to think about the question that's on the screen. So what unit of length would you use to measure each of these objects? So firstly, the length of a spider, the length of your exercise book, the length of the classroom, not that you'll be in it when you read this, and the distance from here to America. So what units would you use to measure each of these? Have a little think. Okay, so hopefully you've thought of units that are similar to the ones that I'm about to show you. So for the length of a spider, they're quite small, so I think you should measure them in millimetres. The length of your exercise book, a bit bigger, should be in centimetres. The length of the classroom, even bigger still, will be in metres, and from here to America, that will be kilometres. Okay, so you might have thought of these units, but you might have also thought of some other units as well that are similarly sized. So you might have said inches, or you might have said feet for the length of the classroom, or you might have said miles rather than kilometres. But I'm using these four because these four are in a special family of units called metric units. So I'm going to write that down. Okay, so the four that we've got there are metric units, and they have these very common prefixes at the front of each one. So you might have seen milli, centi, and kilo before with other different units, and they refer to how to convert between these four things. All right, the reason why we like metric units is because they work on powers of 10. Okay, the way to convert between them is really nice. So I want you to suppose that you've got something that you've measured. Let's suppose you've got something in kilometres. How would you convert it and change the units into metres? Okay, well, you've got to think about how many metres fits into a kilometre and then do the conversion that way. So let's write down how we convert between these things. So if you want to convert kilometres into metres, let's put a number down. So let's suppose you've got something like 3 kilometres. Well, that's 3,000 metres because there is 1,000 metres in a kilometre. So to convert in this direction, you have to times by 1,000. Okay. Notice also the direction of the arrow as well. If I've got 3 kilometres, then that's going to turn into 3,000 metres. Okay. Right. If I've got some metres, then how would you get into centimetres? Well, again, think about how many centimetres fits into a metre, and then you can do the conversion. So let's take off the pen for a second. So if you can imagine how much you've got written down, then it kind of helps you convert between them. So I suppose you've got 5 metres. Well, each metre is 100 centimetres. So if this is 5 metres, I'm going to end up with 500 centimetres. So the conversion from metres to centimetres is times 100. And then finally, from centimetres into millimetres, there are 10 millimetres in a centimetre, so the conversion is going to be timesing by 10. Okay, so that's how you convert. And again, make sure you're looking at which way these arrows go. So if the unit that you're using is getting smaller, because a metre is smaller than a kilometre, then the number that you're going to have is going to get bigger. Okay, remember we said 3 kilometres, the unit gets smaller, but the number that you've got gets bigger. And that'll be 3,000 metres again. Okay, so what I want to do, you need to draw this diagram. You don't particularly need to draw the pictures as well, but you need to have the units in the middle and then the conversions along the top with that direction on. And then underneath, if we're going to convert from left to right, where the unit's getting bigger, then the number that you're going to have is going to get smaller. So the conversions underneath will be the same, but with divisions. So divide by 10 that way, divide by 100, and divide by 1,000. Okay. Right, so take some time to draw that picture in. Make sure you've got both conversions with the arrows pointing the right way. Okay, moving on then. So using this picture, we're going to stick to those 4 units of length. And we're going to use them to do some estimating first of all. So if you've got a rough idea as to how big these things are, these 4 units, then you can use them to estimate how big things are. So let's think about how tall is a giraffe. So let's think of a picture of one. So we can do that by comparing it to something that we know the size of. So a human being is roughly 2 meters tall if you're an adult. So if you think about how many humans you think can fit into the giraffe, then if it's about 3 stacks of a person tall and each one's 2 meters, then we think maybe the giraffe's about 6 meters tall. Okay, so you can think of it that way. If you can't quite measure it, you can do some comparisons. Okay, right, so let's think about these objects then. I want you to think about a rough estimate for how long these things are. And can you also use the appropriate units as well? So if something's very large, like the skyscraper, you wouldn't be measuring it in millimeters. I want you to choose the right unit there. Okay, so let's have a think about what some of these lengths would roughly be then. So this is my rough estimate, but yours is probably going to be something hopefully similar. So the length of a car, well, if you lie down next to one, it's going to be longer than a human is going to be, and I would say probably about 3 meters or 4 meters, depending on how long the car is and what the make is. And meters is going to be an appropriate unit to use because that matches roughly as to how long it is. The height of the classroom. Now, you're not in the classroom at the moment, but if you think about any room in your house, again, if a human being is about 2 meters tall, then the height of the classroom might be 3 meters or maybe a bit more. So again, I would say roughly about the same thing. So I'm going to say 3 meters tall. Probably a bit bigger, but that's about right. The length of a limousine. Well, limousine is a stretch car, isn't it? And it's going to be a lot longer than a normal car. If it's a particularly long one, it's going to get, I would say, probably about as far as 10 meters. Again, because I suppose 2 or 3 cars would fit lengthwise into the length of a limousine. And then a skyscraper with 30 floors is going to be considerably bigger. But if we've said that the height of a floor is going to be about 3 meters, let's say, then if we've got 30 floors, then 3 lots of 30 is about 90 meters. So maybe extending it a bit longer makes it into about 100 meters tall. And that's a good estimate. Okay, so that's just starting off using some estimations to how long things are. Let's move on to some other units as well. So the width of your finger now, if you look at it for a second, the units to use are going to be the small units because your fingernail is small. I would say roughly 2 millimeters is pretty accurate. The length of a playing field. Depends on the playing field, I suppose, but if it's a standard one, then I guess something like 100 meters again. And the distance you walk from your last class, well, you won't have done that yet because you've been on holiday and you're currently working from home. But if you think about the distance you normally walk from one class to the next, depends again on how far away the classroom is, but I think a good estimate is going to be something like 50 meters, something like that. Okay, hopefully you thought of something similar to that. Okay, right, so that's just estimating. We like to use units that match the size of what you're measuring as well, to try and keep the numbers in the right, as a kind of medium size rather than too big or too small. Okay, so as part of your classwork then, what I want you to do is do some converting on the sheet that I'm going to give you. So here we are. This is converting metric lengths. The first side of this is converting from meters to kilometres. You've got the diagram that's going to help you do that conversion. So there's a particular sum you'll be doing to go from left to right. So meters are going to be over on this side, kilometres on this side, convert between them. And for the second table, you're going to go from kilometres all into meters. Okay, now note some of these have got fractions in and mixed numbers. It's going to be helpful to you to convert into decimals first, because that makes it easier to do the conversion sum. So if you see one like this with 1 3/4 or the half, I would convert into a decimal first. Okay, that's going to make it easier for you. Okay, so that's task 1. Then on the other side, there's some that match, that mix and match between all the different units that we've used. So you've got bronze, silver, gold questions. How many is on each one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so can I suggest that you do 4 questions from each column? Okay, so that means you're going to do 4 bronze questions, 4 silver and 4 gold. And then you've got units on the number that you've got, and you're converting that into meters. I'm going to do the first ones for you, and then you pick any 4 from the remaining ones. Okay. So to start with, bronze, you've got 5 centimetres. I want that into millimetres. The conversion, because there's 10 millimetres in a centimetre, the conversion is going to be timesing by 10. So 55 centimetres is going to become 50 millimetres. Okay, you don't need to write what the sum is, but it will help you if you want to write that down. Okay, centimetres into millimetres again, that's another times 10, but 0.6 is going to turn into 6. It's the same conversion. Remember, when you times by 10 and 100 and 1,000, the digits move around the decimal point, and that's going to get one place bigger. Meters into millimetres, though, well, these are 2 units apart on your diagram, because your diagram has got millimetres at this end, and then centimetres, and then meters, and then kilometres. And if I want to move from meters to millimetres, I have to do 2 conversions because there's centimetres in the middle. So meters to centimetres, that one was times 100. And then centimetres into millimetres is another times 10. Okay, so if I combine those 2 changes, if I do both of these conversions, timesing by 100 and then timesing by 10 is the same as doing timesing by 1,000. Okay, so if you do that those twice, you're going to get times 1,000. So 1,000 lots of 36 gives me 36,000 millimetres. Okay, right, so 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these. And then on the remaining part of the page, you've got some other things to do. So just moving downwards. For these ones, I want to put them into ascending order, so put them into smallest to biggest. And to do that, you're ideally going to want to make them all into the same units. Okay, if they're the same units on each one, then you can convert them and compare them a lot better than if they're all different units. And then there's some extra exam style questions at the bottom there as well. Okay, right, so those are the things I want you to do, and that's going to take today's lesson. And I'll speak to you next week when we've got next lesson. All right, thanks, Year 8. If you've got any questions, then you can let me know either on Show My Homework or by email, or you can leave me a comment. All right, thanks very much. See you soon.